Hello, friends. We are back again doing Wit and Wisdom lesson 16. So I am going to turn on our screen up here. All right. Let me fix it to where you can see the whole screen. All right. So let's look at this. It's what I know and what I do. And usually we put this in our journals, okay? So I want us to think back. What did we learn from our lessons on the rough-faced girl and Cinderella? What did you learn about our essential question? Why do people around the world admire Cinderella? Think about that. What did we learn from the rough-faced girl and Bigfoot Cinderella? What do you know? We know that in those stories that they had mean stepsisters and that they were determined and kind-hearted, that they persevered through all their hardships, and they won out in the end, didn't they? They won their prince. Now think about, why do people around the world admire Cinderella? It's almost like a rags to riches story, isn't it? She starts out doing all the work. She gets a fairy godmother or a fairy godfather, and their wishes come true. In the end, they marry their prince. It's like a fairy tale, which basically it is a fairy tale. So let's look at this. What did we learn as a reader, and what did we learn as a writer? So what I know, let's fill in our chart. What I know. So what I know is Cinderella stories can have characters that are not people. So I'm going to put Cinderella stories can have characters that are not people. Okay, what else do I know? I also know that Cinderella stories can take place outside in nature, right? They can take place outside. Right. What else do we know? We also know that the Cinderella characters don't always change into nice clothes. The rough-faced girl wore clothes she made herself, and Ella's fur was messy. So their clothes don't always change. All right, so what can I do? We can write a reason to support opinion statements. I can write a reason to support my opinion. Okay. So you can leave that in your journal. Don't have to turn that in to me. All right, let's move on. All right, our focus question: why do people admire Rough-Faced Girl and Ella? How do the Rough-Faced Girl and Bigfoot Cinderella build my knowledge? So let's talk about the word admire. Admire. What does admire mean? Well, it means to have a lot of respect for someone. Okay, we were going to be writing about what you most admire about Ella at the end of this lesson. But we're going to compare and contrast stories of the rough-faced girl and Bigfoot Cinderella with Cinderella. So let's look at our record elements of Cinderella's stories. All right. I know, my friends, you guys have not seen this where we've got it all put together, okay? So on this, we've got the text over here. We've got Cinderella, Cinderella, the rough-faced girl, and Bigfoot Cinderella. We've got the good characters, evil characters, magical element, and proof of identity. So let's think about this. In the rough-faced girl and Bigfoot Cinderella, what do you think is the magical element in those stories? Think about that. What is the magical element in the rough-faced girl? Well, would you think the magical element would be the invisible being? Possibly. Or could it be nature being the magical element? Possibly also. So let's start back with the characters. Let's start there. The rough-faced girl characters. Who are the good characters in the rough-faced girl? We know we have the rough-faced girl, and the other good character would be the invisible being's sister, right? I'm going to put invisible being sister. I abbreviated IB sister, all right, for invisible being. Who are the evil characters in that story? We have the sisters, don't we? Because they sit there and they're very haughty and they're like, I'm better than you. I want all the best things. And they go off to see the invisible being and they end up lying, right? Okay. The magical element here would be either the invisible being but the invisible being is what? He's nature. So I'm going to put both there, okay? Invisible being and nature. What's the proof of identity here? You know, like in Cinderella, it was the glass slipper, and Cinderella, it was the pink slipper. But what was the proof of identity here? It's actually seeing the invisible being. Okay. Now, let's talk about Bigfoot Cinderella here. Who are the good characters there? Well, we have Ella. We have the fairy godfather. And we have the prince, right? Okay, so we have three characters. Who are the evil characters here? Well, it's the stepmom and the stepsisters. Because they tease her, they make her work, just like the stepsisters and stepmom up here in Cinderella and in Cinderella and the rough-faced girl. What's the magical element in Bigfoot Cinderella? The fairy godfather. He's just like the magical element up here, the fairy godmother, I could put fairy godmother up here in Cinderella besides the magic wand. But it's just the fairy godfather. He didn't have a magic wand or anything. It was just him. What's the proof of identity? It was that bark clog, wasn't it? It was that bark clog. All right, so this is our elements of Cinderella's stories. Cinderella, the good characters were Cinderella, fairy godmother. Evil characters were stepsisters. The magical element was magic wand and fairy godmother. And the proof of identity was the glass slipper. Whereas in Cinderella and Nana were the good characters. Madame and Vitaline were the evil characters. The magical element was the magic mahogany wand. And the proof of identity was the pink slipper. Rough Face Girl, the good characters, Rough Face Girl and the Invisible Being sister. The evil characters were the sisters. The magical element was the invisible being and nature. And the proof of identity was seeing the invisible being. Bigfoot Cinderella, the good characters were Ella, the fairy godfather, and the prince. Evil characters, stepmom and stepsisters. Magical element was the fairy godfather, and the proof of identity was the big bark clog. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so who are the good characters in the Rough Face Girl? Well, we just answered that, didn't we? We said it was the Rough Face Girl and the Invisible Being's sister. Did we not? Yeah. Who were the evil characters in the Rough Face Girl? That was the sisters, right? What was the magical element in the Rough Face Girl? We know it was the nature or the invisible being. What is the proof of identity in the Rough Face Girl? It's seeing the invisible being, isn't it? Now let's think Bigfoot Cinderella. The good characters in Bigfoot Cinderella were Ella and the fairy godfather and the prince. The evil characters in Bigfoot Cinderella were the stepsisters and stepmom. And then the magical element in Bigfoot Cinderella was the fairy godfather. And the proof of identity in Bigfoot Cinderella was the big bark clog. So comparing characters' experiences. So what is this called? This is called a Venn diagram. It's where we're comparing two things, how they are different, but this middle, how they connect here, it shows how they are the same. All right? And we did talk about it a little bit in our previous lessons. All right. So what you're going to do here is you have a sheet actually. Let me pull it up. I'm going to have to share my screen with you. Okay. So let me share. And we're going to look at this. All right, so on this, it says to cut up these cards and sort the cards according to where their experiences are, either Cinderella's, Ella's, or both. And this is what basically goes into Cinderella, both, and Ella. All right, so I'm gonna mute that so we don't see that, but you've got this page here. And what I would like for you to do on this page, if you wish, you can mark a C on it, an E on it, or B. Okay? So let's look at the first one with the broom. Has to do all the cleaning at home. Who used a broom and did all the cleaning at home? That'd been Cinderella. Yeah. Okay. Who has an evil stepmother who is mean to her. Ooh, that would be both, wouldn't it? Yeah, they both have stepmoms that are mean to them. What about has to fish for her family? That would be Ella, wouldn't it? She was out fishing. Oh, who has a fairy godmother who uses a magic wand to help her? Cinderella. Who goes to a party where she meets a prince? That would be both, wouldn't it? Cinderella met her prince at a ball where Ella met hers at a fun fest. Who has a fairy godfather who used magic to help her? I bet that was Ella. That was Ella. Who has combed hair and fancy clothes? That would be Cinderella, right? Because Ella didn't have fancy clothes and her hair wasn't combed, was it? No, it had flowers in it. Who marries the prince? They both marry the prince. And the last one there, who has tangled fur and no fancy clothes? That would be Ella, wouldn't it? Okay, so I hope you were able to mark C for Cinderella, E for Ella, or B for both on those. And that is your Venn diagram. So if you go back and you look at, we'll stop sharing a second. If you look up here at our Venn diagram, on Cinderella's side, she has to do all the cleaning. She has the fairy godmother. She has combed hair and fancy clothes. She dances with the prince at the ball, right? And then they both have evil stepmothers. They both go to a party where they meet a prince and they both marry a prince. Ella, on the other side, has to fish for her family, has a fairy godfather who uses magic. She has tangled fur and no fancy clothes, right? Okay. Now, what kind of proof of identity did Cinderella have? She had the glass slipper. What did Ella have? She had the bark clog, didn't she? All right, let's move on. So it says distribute 16A, and we just did that. So we can move on from that. We kind of did it a little backwards here. Let me move this up so you can see it. All right, so now we're going to create our focus question task 2. So let's look at our assessment 15A again, our focus question. Okay, so our 15A focus question. Remember, looks like this. Let me get my mouse over here. I'm going to share again. Let me get rid of this. So our focus question, here it is what do you most admire about Ella? Okay, first, read the evidence on the Ella traits chart. Next, choose a trait you most admire about Ella. Then you're going to write an opinion paragraph telling what you most admire about Ella. And then you're going to support your response using evidence from the text Bigfoot Cinderella. Okay, so you've got to answer the question, what do you most admire about Ella? I most admire blank about Ella. And then you've got to tell why you admire her. And then you've got to restate on your opinion paragraph. Now, remember last time we did this, we wrote it all on our task evidence organizer, our opinion statement, our reason, and then our conclusion, okay? We wrote it out there. This is just the organizer. Now you are going to rewrite that and turn it in for your assessment. Make sure, though, that you have answered that question about what do you most admire about Ella? Okay? What do you most admire about Ella? And with your reason and your conclusion. Make sure, though, that you have capitals and punctuation and that you space between your words, too. All right, so let's move on. I'm going to stop sharing here. And I'm going to bring us back up here. I'm doing a lot of going back and forth, aren't I? Yes. Oops, wrong thing. Let me get back out again. Okay, so let's move on. So Erland, how do the Rough-Faced Girl and Bigfoot Cinderella build my knowledge? What have we learned from them, okay? What is one thing that is the same and one thing that is different between the two stories? What's the same between the Rough-Faced Girl and Bigfoot Cinderella? Well, I know that the sisters were really mean to them, right? And the same about them, they both ended up with somebody in the end. The Rough-Faced Girl ended up with the invisible being. Bigfoot Cinderella ended up with the prince, right? And they both were determined to work through whatever was going on. They never gave up. So, fluency homework check-in. Let's read this fluency homework. I think we should have it memorized by now as many times as we've been reading this. So let's share our screen here. Let's get it up here. Let me get rid of this here. And maybe I don't have it up here. Maybe I do not have it up here. Well, you know what? That's okay. We just won't worry about it then, since I don't have it up. You can always go back into, because I think I have it up in our assignments, okay? Just to practice your homework check-in. All right, let's move on. So our deep dive, let's look at our deep dive here. In our deep dive today, we're still talking possessive pronouns, all right? So today we're talking about possessive pronouns. So think about what possessive pronoun would replace the possessives here in the sentence. Like John and Sally's house is close to the store. Whose house? You could put there, couldn't you? What about Sarah's dress is red? What could you replace Sarah with? Her. What about mom's car is blue? Her. And what about the family's dog is brown? Whose dog is it? Their. Great. All right. So now from here, let's talk about indefinite pronouns and how they work in sentences. So an indefinite pronoun are words that are used to talk about people, places, and things without saying who, where, or what they are. So indefinite pronouns are compound words made up of two different words. And there are usually 4 words that begin each of these pronouns, like any, every, no, and some. So let's look here. We have any, every, no, and some. We have people, places, and things. So these pronouns, anywhere would be what? It would be a place. And everyone would be a person, right? What about no one. That would be people also. Or something. That would be a thing. You could even do anyone here for people or someone. So all of these could represent people without saying names. And places everywhere. Besides anywhere, nowhere, and somewhere. And things. Anything, everything, nothing, and something. So we could use those pronouns instead of people's names, places' names, or things' names. So we got ahead right there. So anywhere is a place, anyone is a person, anybody is a person, and anything is things, okay? And they're used to talk about pieces, people, places, and things without saying who, where, or what they are. So see words on previous page and move to correct box on chart. Well, we've already done that too, haven't we? So everyone was at my house for dinner last night. What is the indefinite pronoun there? Would be everyone, right? I didn't have anything to do last weekend. What's the pronoun there? Anything. My dad went somewhere for business last week. What's the indefinite pronoun? Somewhere. And nobody was home when the doorbell rang. What's the indefinite pronoun? Nobody. Great job. All right. Let's move on here. And that is the end of the lesson. You guys worked really hard. Thank you. And I will see you back here tomorrow.